We gather in the cosmos bright. Stars and ships take flight tonight. In the void where dreams do play. Soul citizens lead the way. Borders fade in nebula's light. Unknown worlds will chart tonight. Through the galaxy we soar. Endless journeys at our core. Borders fade in nebula's light. Unknown worlds will chart tonight. Through the galaxy we soar. Endless journeys at our core. Starry roads in endless skies. Soul citizens we rise. Charting courses never lost. Together the verses crossed. Squadrons call on the horizon. Battles fought, our hearts aren't frightened. In our ships we face the dawn. Soul citizens carry on. Oh, planets spin and light years fly. Boundless space where hopes reside. Brotherhood in every star. Soul citizens, here we are. Borders fade in nebula's light. Unknown worlds will chart tonight. Through the galaxy we soar. Endless journeys at our core. Starry roads in endless skies. Soul citizens we rise. Charting courses never lost. Together the verses crossed.
The intro was going. Let's see. There we go. All right. Hey.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Greetings. Welcome back to Soul Citizens. I am GriffinGamingRPG. I'm here with my good friend and co-host, Kalrati, today with you guys. How are you, my friend?
I am wonderful. I was vibing with that song. It was like, oh.
I was about to ask you.
Fire.
I was going to ask you, it's so funny. That song plays in my head during the week. I have to give a shout out to Serious Fun. I don't know. He found the funk in there for some way or other. Something about the hook. I think it's the hook because it's always the hook in my head. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, shout out to him for putting that together for us. And we've had great work. The work that we've had from the folks over at New Soul. I mean, we've just had really great theme songs that have just been really good and reflective of us. But I think that one's got the chill mode to it, I think is what it is. I don't know. But I enjoy it. Yeah.
Thank you, Colossal, for the subscription.
Yeah, thank you, Colossal. We appreciate that. Well, anyway, welcome again, everybody. Today it's the dynamic duo teamwork here. We're going to be covering a topic that might be a little bit. Well, it's going to be different, but we definitely want to see you guys' thoughts too. So feel free to get ready to do some typing on this one. And the title of this week's show is "Oops." Fixing the faux pas. If we want to translate that for those of you wonderful French folks out there, fixing the mistakes. What are the mistakes? And many of us have been a part of the Star Citizen community for many years, and we've seen plenty of things that CIG has done well, but we've also seen plenty of things that maybe they didn't do so well. And we've talked about some of those things. We've talked about communication, marketing, but we want to kind of talk a little bit more, not only about the areas where there have been possible mistakes, but we also want to talk about what are maybe some better ways. What are some things that could have maybe been done differently that may have had an impact on the community in a way that might have been different if it had done some other things. I have my own questions about how CIG assesses when they want to do something that will impact the community. And we can talk about that. I'm sure Kalrati will have some thoughts on that as well. So that's going to be kind of the theme for today. So this isn't about what's the latest thing about the Valacar, nothing like that. This is really going to be us kind of assessing some things that have taken place, particularly over the last few weeks coming out of Invictus. So I think Kalrati and I are both ready. He has his juice. I have my Kit Kat, and we're going to jump into this and have a little conversation. So what I did was, like all of us do, we have these new online tools that we can use to find out information. And as I get older, I'm learning to use those tools as much as I possibly can, as long as they're pretty good. So I decided to go the old fashioned way and just kind of go with Google. And basically, I asked Google about mistakes that have been criticisms that have come up in relation to Cloud Imperium Games and Star Citizen. So we're going to open up with that first. We're going to kind of hit you guys with what came up from me doing that Google. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the sourcing of some of this stuff. And, maybe Kalrati, let's talk a little bit about you. Why this particular show caught you? Because you volunteered to do this show. So was there anything in particular about this particular topic that drew you in?
Yeah, so I've always been curious about different companies and how they've approached challenges, and really fixing fixing challenges in terms of management, in terms of execution of certain things, and particularly when looking at some of the past criticisms.
Mm-hmm.
Every company is different. Every company will make mistakes. Some will be valid in terms of criticism. Some will be invalid or not so much. So I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. I'm curious about hearing or seeing chat's thoughts on it as well. So a lot of things in terms of management and execution of certain decisions are part of the reasons why I'm here.
Okay. They're saying that your volume is low, and I've got this thing really boosted fast card.
Right,
so
let me boost it up on my end then.
Yeah, because I don't know why you are that soft, but I'm going to boost you from here too. I've got you like at 180, believe it or not, which is really weird. Yeah,
Increase the vibe.
it might be. Let me see if this is on. What is this on? No, it's on the chat. I don't know why it's that low. Let me check one more thing here. Is it better? Is he sounding good? Because I've really pushed it to the limit here to get him a little louder. I could do output here. Let me raise that. Okay, talk one more time, Kalrati.
All right, so FC is saying that he always has me at 200. Yeah, I'm sorry, my voice is always in the vibe, and it's kind of low. So I'm trying to increase it a little bit for you guys, all right?
All right, yeah, we'll either have him get closer to the mic or he'll speak up just a little bit more, and I'll try to pull back some so I'm not too overshadowing of him.
Oh, it's still super low. Okay, let me dial down the vibe and increase the little.
Still low, still super low. Holy smoke!
All right, how's this? I'm gonna monitor. So yeah,
you're
mic down.
Hang on.
No, I'm using my mic, my desktop mic.
Hold on.
Not my headset mic.
All right, I just boosted him a little bit more. One more time, Kalrati.
All right, testing 1, 2, and 3.
Is he still low for you guys? He probably is. How about now? Try it now, Kalrati.
Okay, it's much better. I'm just gonna give it a little bit of a sweet touch one more time. And
yeah, I'm boosting on my end too here. Try now, Kalrati.
All right, I am trying one more time. Testing 1, 2, 3. How does that sound, beautiful people?
No, that was better, a bit better. Okay, all right, we're gonna try and make sure he speaks up a little bit. I'm gonna
speak into the mic really, really closely. How about that?
Yeah, I don't know why you're that low. That I see what they're talking about. For some reason, Discord is not like really boosting you up. But all right, hang on a minute.
Yeah, sure thing.
How's that? Whoa, there we go.
I was wondering. I just increased it by like
No, I did something.
25%.
Is that it?
Okay.
All right. So I need to pull my mic back because I'm a little on the hot side. Is that better, guys?
How's that, guys?
Is that better? One more time, Kalrati. Go ahead and say something.
Baby, one more time. How's that?
We're more balanced. Okay. All right. We're going to try to work with that. All right. Thanks, guys. Okay. Fine on YouTube. Thank you, Robert. Good to see you. Okay. Great. All right. We're going to go ahead and move forward. And
let's go.
Chopping that out of there. Let's go to change pages, right? We already changed pages. So we got to go here, here, and let's go here. Okay. So this is what came up in Google. Okay. It said Cloud Imperium Games CIG, the developer of Star Citizen, has faced criticism for several issues, including management practices, development processes, customer support. Specifically, employees have voiced concerns about poor management, treating employees as disposable, and the use of pushing the boundaries of game development phrase to justify various practices. Additionally, Star Citizen has been criticized for the length of its alpha phase, the prevalence of bugs, particularly the 30K errors, and issues with in-game rewards. Okay. So some of this, and for those of you who've been around for any length of time, you know that there have been issues and articles written over the years about some of these different items that are listed here. They're not new to anyone who's been a part of this community for a while. And I've spent time looking at places like Glassdoor, LinkedIn, other places to see different things that are being said about a company, particularly Cloud Imperium Games. It's interesting that when I read a lot of these things, they are usually leaning more toward the negative. The things that are posted, you know what I mean? And that's understandable because when people feel a certain kind of way about something, they basically, like people when they order something from Instacart or whatever, right? If they don't like it, they'll go write a review, right? But if Instacart is doing well or doing what it's supposed to do, not a lot of times people say, "Oh, that meal was so great. Let me get on and make a review of it." Right? It takes a little bit more to do that. So, understanding human nature, that when we're not satisfied by things, it is we're much more willing to be vocal about it and express those feelings more than when things are going the way we expect them to or as normal. We don't go and write about my normal day at work where everything went well and I go and make a great review about it. So I want to be really aware of that, of how our human nature is when it comes to writing down both criticisms as well as compliments.
And
what?
Do you think this human nature is, at least based on the criticisms that CIG has received, has been akin to the fact that the model of Star Citizen has that whole monetization with the pledging and such? In tandem with the development, or do you think it's?
I think when we get to the second half of the show, that question is going to be more relevant because I hear where you're going. Because I've never heard, when I've read the reviews, I've never seen anything from former employees or anything like that talk about monetization money or how money's being misspent. I think only one time I saw somebody, and it was when they were moving into the new facility, and the person was saying where they're buying these pieces of art and stuff to put into the place, and they felt that might have been a little bit excessive. But I've never really heard any problems with the funding model from employees. Not saying that there hasn't been anything. I'm just saying I've never read anything. Most of the stuff I've read has been more in relation to like employee relationship stuff more than anything, and work and workload. So one of the agencies was kind of interesting too, Kalrati. When I did the search on this, the criticisms or the detailed criticisms that came up, or critiques, whichever way you want to look at it, came particularly from a website that I had never heard of. And the website was called 80 Level. Okay. And what 80 Level said, it says that this is what their description is. And when you ask who is 80 Level, it says 80 Level is the best source of information for video game technology and art. They gather and illustrate best practices for developers, publishers, creators, and middleware providers in exclusive articles, focusing on bringing the best technology insights from game developers across the globe. 80 Level features interviews, case studies, breakdowns from top industry specialists, working with the likes of EA DICE, Blizzard, King, Ubisoft, Monolith, Autodesk, Bethesda Softworks, and Epic Games. Okay. Now, they just mentioned some of those, and I can understand anybody who's writing up something about a company, they're going to put down who their premier people are that they work with because they're recognizable names. The negative side to that, though, is that you also don't find out who are the other companies they evaluate. Right?
I'm very happy to be here.
If these are the only companies that they rely on because they're the industry bigwigs, right? Are independent companies a part of what they do? Smaller companies, startups, how do they filter all of their information? So I wanted to mention that because if we look at who the companies are, for lack of a better label, these are industry standard companies. These are companies who've been operating a certain way for the most part, and quite often even work the same in some ways, right? And how they do things. Some of them may even have the same reputation. There are a lot of people who might feel the same way about EA Dice as they feel about Ubisoft, as they feel about Epic Games. Exactly, you know what I mean? So it's not that these companies have distinguished themselves.
All the same.
Yeah, they have not distinguished themselves very differently in the industry, particularly when it comes to the area of development time, and money, right? How much money is spent, how much time is spent, and quality of product. So I'm going to put that out there too, that I also say pay attention to who's talking when we start reevaluating what we consider industry standard. Okay. All right. So let's take on this very first topic. And by the way, that was Sticky Dirty Fingers. Thank you for the follow. Glad to have you on with us tonight. Hope you enjoy hanging out with us. All right. Why don't you pick up this very first one that they listed, which was poor management?
Yeah, sure. So poor management. Employees have described Cloud Imperium Games management as being dismissive of employee concerns and using the phrase pushing the boundaries of game development to justify various practices, even when those practices lead to negative outcomes for employees, according to Glassdoor reviews and reports on 80 level.
Okay. So, mind you, we're just touching on these. We're really going to be focusing on community stuff, but we wanted to be fair and say, are some of these complaints, what do you think about them when you look at a company? If you find, like, there are a lot of people who will buy products from a company based on their reputation, right? Not just in the sense of the quality of what they put out, but sometimes reputation will even have an effect on whether someone decides to purchase from someone, right? So, on this one with poor management, give me your thoughts about this. Is this in your industry? Is this something that is commonly felt? Is it something that is rare? Is that we've heard them talk about pushing the boundaries thing before? What are your thoughts on that?
So the irony behind management, especially lean management, where if you were to think about things like, or if you think about the concept of lean, removing waste or getting to a point where things are as optimal as possible to execute something, be it a cycle time or remove any kind of non-value added time or non-value added activity. Everybody talks about it. To get to that point of doing it, especially when you are working in an industry or in an organization that is heavily research oriented or research and development oriented, it's a bit of like they're kind of fighting each other, because you want to execute certain things as strategically and as optimally as possible. But at the same time, if you're doing a whole bunch of research and you're not entirely sure where the end result or where the path is going to take you, then how are you going to apply industry or the best practices always in an unknown space? I remember a developer, I think he was QA specifically. He was talking to me, and it was just over a private thing. And he this was a couple of years ago. And he did say, he's been working at the company for a while, and there were some things that he would like to change in terms of, if he were to get to a particular position, and some things that he didn't quite agree with. We didn't really go much into what he meant by that, because it was just a regular chat,
right? But
it kind of goes back to the whole top bottom up kind of approach or cycle or loop when it comes to being in management. And it's really unfortunate that, going back to the whole research thing, that if you are trying to do something new, you can't always abide by industry standard, especially when it comes to management. Sometimes you will have to use certain strategies up to a point because the new things that you're trying to develop may require an unknown amount of time that not even a very experienced developer will be willing to, predict.
Mm-hmm.
The unfortunate, or the things that you don't always want either, is when you have some workers, and this is, I think, the case in many companies or any company, some workers who are admittedly very experienced, but they are so sometimes tuned into the amount of experience and the amount of practices that they've been doing that is related to the best practices in an industry standard, that they are unwilling to accept that it's going to take a lot more time to do XYZ because of the I don't want to call it ignorance, but a word that is similar to it. So as a result, they may have their own perspectives, and because of that, even though they have the experience of executing XYZ actions, it may lead to some kind of disagreements. I'm not saying that this is the case in CIG, but this is what I've experienced.
Yeah.
So in terms of poor management, some cases can be very valid. Some cases can be valid to a point where it just kicks back to the fact that, okay, there's a lot of research being done, and it's going to kick back, or it's going to kick or fight against the best practice that supports proper management.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I worked for 30 years. In 20 of those years, I was a manager in some form. And first of all, there's always the thing that managers don't know what they're doing. Employees don't feel like employee managers, they don't know what they're doing, And I shouldn't say that's always, but a lot of times that's the default feeling when something isn't going well. And sometimes managers don't know what they're doing, right? To your point, though, I think this is one of the things I learned starting out as a manager. There are people who know how to manage work, and there are people who know how to manage people. And sometimes you will get someone who comes in and they know how to manage the work, right? I mean, they know what needs to be done. They know scheduling and all the things need to be done for timelines and all this other stuff. But they don't know how to manage people. They don't know how to work with people. And all they're focused on is the timeline, the schedules, the budget, whatever needs to get done, right? And they know that stuff thoroughly.
Yeah.
Then there's the people who are the other way around sometimes. They're really people person, right? They get along with everybody, but maybe they really don't know everything on this other side. I think that one of the things that I remember was that when people got promoted, we had to make sure we spent time when people got elevated to make sure that they understood what it meant to manage people. Because usually their promotion came from managing work. You know what I mean? They were good workers. Oh, yeah. But when they were given the responsibility of being over the other people, they had to learn how do you get those other people under you on board, right? How do you get them excited about something? Or how do you listen to them, right? When something's not going well? Or how do you...
And not micromanage.
How not to micromanage. How to read the tea leaves when someone's having a bad day. All those other things come in there with it too. So a lot of times when it comes to poor management, for me, it's like, are the people in management trained to manage, not just manage work, but also know how to manage staff, people, attitudes, feelings within the office space, all those things, right, that could come in there, right? So it's very difficult to gauge this, right? Because unless you're there in the space and environment, all I know is that a lot of times people will very quickly blame management when things just aren't going well, or the editor office, nobody knows what they're doing. We'll get to that later when we get to just organization, but I do want to kind of touch on that. Let's move on, because like I said, we weren't going to spend more than 5-6 minutes on these. Let's move on to development delays. I gotta change the screen. Holy smoke, I'm way behind here. I haven't changed the screen. I'm sorry, y'all.
This is poor management.
I'm supposed to change the screens. All right, development delays. The use of Star Engine, a refactored version of CryEngine 3, has been cited as a factor in development delays and is considered difficult to work with by some employees, according to 80 Level. Okay. We all kind of know the history of CryEngine, and we kind of know, the fact that this was a engine that was in existence already that has been heavily modified over many, many years. We know that there were some people who came from Crytek to work on this project, but there were some people who had never used CryEngine. CryEngine did some fabulous things back in the early days with some of the games that came out with it before it came over to Star Citizen. And there was a lot of questions. We did a show not too long ago about Unreal and all the other engines that were out there. And we had Grollo and some other people talk about, was this a wise choice to go with? But CryEngine is not one of the industry standards. And more people are onto Unity, right? Unreal. I don't know if CryEngine was that popular over those two, because I know Unity was pretty big, and of course Unreal has been big for a while. But are there development delays because of the engine? Well, we do know that it took them a while to go from what was CryEngine, right, to, was it Lumberyard, right, and then from Lumberyard to Star Engine, right? And they were calling it Star Engine a while back, but it finally morphed over to completely being Star Engine. But is this unusual? You know, this whole thing with, you think, Kalrati, with the way this engine has had to morph over the years to get more stable, to get to a certain place where now they have their engine that is theirs?
No, so, and you raise a good point there. So in my opinion, it's usually, for anything, right, it's usually easier to look back on something after all is said and done and say that we should have gone in this path, we should have gone in that path, and not really remember. Not calling it anyone either. It's actually, like, I think the same for everybody, and not quite remember how long it would have taken to do this kind of work. It would have taken, who knows, the same amount of time with Unreal Engine. At the time, even before CIG started to partner publicly with Amazon for Lumberyard in 2016, Unreal Engine, in terms of persons saying that they should have gone with that, it wasn't the most popular statement to make.
Right.
And Unity was nowhere in the picture when it came to discussions, at least from what I can recall. So CryEngine, at least the demonstrations that CIG showed, the fact that they talked about things like the entity component system, which came way before things like object container. That was the precursor to get us to object container streaming.
Right.
That was what the CryEngine was capable of doing, and that is why they partnered with Crytek and then eventually Lumberyard, because they saw where the direction of the engine was going.
Right.
Of course, eventually after 2016 with the Unreal Engine, we saw how I can't remember the exact timeline, but we eventually saw Unreal's version of object container streaming 3 years after, I think it was in 2019 or 2018, we saw Unreal's revelation of object container streaming. It was definitely after we got object container streaming into the game. That I can remember. So ideally, if Unreal Engine made that kind of progress earlier, then I think at the time when CIG was wanting to get to a point, okay, to use this kind of technology, I think they would have gone with Unreal Engine. But again, it's easier to look back and say that we should have done these things without remembering all the work that it took us to get.
Very true.
I mean CIG.
Very true.
So yeah, I think to this point, I still agree with their choice, because in the end, they had to make a choice. Whether or not that was the best one or not the best one, it was a choice, and they're still gunning with it. In terms of the developers, and I'll say this as the last thing, in terms of some of the developers finding it difficult, I mean, coming out of college, and even when you don't go to college, sometimes Unreal is the go-to when it comes to learning an engine or learning a game engine. Crytek, not so much. I remember when I downloaded the demo version for CryEngine when I was still in uni, just to dabble in, I was like, okay, how do I start with this?
That was a monster. Yep. Nope, that didn't last long.
No. And then Unreal became more popular, especially for students and those things. So I can understand both sides of the field.
Yeah.
But again, CIG made a choice, and this is their choice. And
Yeah. Gray-headed Gamer was one of the first people that I knew who was a content creator, and that's what made me go try it out. You know, because I saw some of the cool stuff that he was doing in there. This is way back, y'all. This is back in the dinosaur, back in the 1800s, before half y'all were here, okay? But he used to actually, build the ships and put them on an island and do size comparisons, and I got really excited. I went in and monkeyed with it and did a little bit of stuff, but I was like, nope. I got to get paid to do this. I'm let that stuff go. All right, let's move on to our next one here. This organization, employees have criticized the organization of the creative process and the constant changes imposed on it according to 80 level. Again, these are all 80 level. Most of these are going to be 80 level that we're talking about. We've got a couple other ones coming up. Yeah, this one, we've heard this before. And I'll give you guys an example of this. There's been this story about how a dev is given an assignment to work on something, and they may work on it from several weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. They've been told by their supervisor or their producer to do something. They do it. They do exactly to the dot, to the period, to crossing the I's, dotting the I's, crossing the T's. Boom, it's done. They turn it in. It gets to the upper heads, and all of a sudden it comes back, and it's like, nope, we don't want that. We want this. We want something else. Or better yet, we want this to be at a 45-degree angle more this way. Or, nah, we don't want that. We're going to go with so and so and so and so. And there have been these people have stated that, you know, it's like we're doing what we're told to do. And it's like it either gets trashed, not trashed, but I mean like thrown out, or it ends up being some weird modification that we have to do. And they could have told us that in the first time. We're wasting time doing all this stuff and blah, 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 blah. I'll tell you a quick story, Kalrati.
Yeah.
One really, really cool director. I was going to say James Cameron, but it's not James Cameron. It's the guy who did Blade Runner. And
yeah.
What's the director's name? Y'all did Blade Runner and Alien, and I'm having a brain fart. Come on, y'all help the old man out. Thank you,
Ridley?
DJ. Thank you, DJ. Ridley Scott. Okay.
Thanks.
So if you guys watch the director's cuts or the behind the scenes on the making of like Blade Runner, especially, it's really cool to see. Okay. And this is what happened. The same thing happened to George Lucas too, by the way. I'm always using George Lucas as an example, so I'm not going to use George Lucas today, y'all. Yeah, very funny zombie pig, Mel Brooks. No, not Mel Brooks. Okay. So this is what happened. One of the cool things about Ridley Scott is that Ridley Scott knows like a lot of stuff about doing work. He used to do television work, right? He used to produce commercials. He had done thousands of them before he started doing film. But he was also very familiar with all the departments. James Cameron is the same way too. James Cameron came up working everything from being a grip all the way up, you know, getting coffee. So he worked in every department. Anyway, Ridley Scott had drawn out a drawing for what he wanted done for this particular part of the movie. And when it was the first day of the set, they got there and it wasn't what Ridley wanted. Ridley wanted something else, but the art people put something else in because when you look at it physically, it was a pillar. And when you look at the pillar, it honestly looks like it should be this certain kind of way, right? Because the bulk of the weight is at the bottom, but he wanted it the other way around. So when he came in, he looked at the set and the first thing he saw was that thing was wrong, right? Now, this is day one of shooting, right? Everybody's on set. And he says, turn all the pillars around. Dude, it was like 12 pillars in this whole room. They were like 20 feet high. Okay. They're like, what? He's like, yeah, they're wrong.
Oh,
it's not what I wanted. I wanted this, you know? And so they ended up, instead of starting at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. in the morning, they didn't start till 2 that afternoon. Because they literally had to go through the room. And mind you, the room, it was the part where they go into the place where the guy makes the clones, where the floor was all polished. So they had to go in and like,
oh no.
Yeah, everybody to go out there, trample on the floor, flip the pillars over, then go back and get the floor all polished and everything else, right? You see how you're shaking your head? Okay. That's what the devs do, okay? Okay. All right. Somebody finds something so meticulous that probably some people would say nobody would notice it. Yes, thank you, Roger Corman. Yeah, Corman, that's who Cameron and them studied under. So, but something that some people would have said wasn't a big deal. There was another example. The first opening sequence where he's interviewing the one clone and he's sitting in the office and he's using the machine on him to ask him questions to see if he's lying or not. Said that the props guy had brought in, he said it's supposed to look like an office, and the props guy had brought in like 5, 6 different coffee cups for Ridley to pick which coffee cup do you like. And he said, I don't like any of them. And so he's like, well, just pick one. What's the big deal? So one of the guys took the prop master to the side and said, hey, dude, go out and get like 500 coffee cups, man. Don't, just go get 500 coffee cups. You know, he said, and so the dude got fired. Dude got mad and left. Right? But the guy was trying to tell him, listen, this dude has shot over 1,000 commercials. If he tells you to bring him some coffee cups, bring him so many coffee cups that he ain't got no excuse but to pick some. You see what I'm saying? Now that seems eccentric. That seems eccentric, right? But if you look at Ridley Scott's work, when it's all said and done, it's pretty amazing stuff. So my point is that this, depending on these guys were doing industry standard. Industry standard was, let's bring in 6 coffee cups and pick one, right? And then you get that guy and says, no, man, that ain't enough, or flip the pillars over, right? So I'm only mentioning that because I think that sometimes there could be a sense of disorganization. Now, mind you, I agree that people should convey their thoughts as best as possible, but we also know things do change in development, right? In game development, even when it comes to art, we've seen that happen with our ships concept stuff. Okay, I ran too long on that, but I wanted to just give that as an example of how artistry can also have an effect on people. And people may think you're crazy, but anyway, what do you want to say anything about this organization?
I fully agree with your frustrations. I would have left too. But apart from that, but it is a very frustrating thing when you're trying to push the boundaries or be creative. But to be creative and also have some kind of limit to that creativity where time and money is a factor can also be another setback as well, another contradiction as well.
Yeah.
And that also, as a result, can lead to disorganizations.
Yeah.
Because here you're trying to execute a product. Funding and money is on the line also, and people as human resources. But at the same time, well,
no, you're right.
You're trying to be creative, and it's like,
listen,
they don't always work hand in hand.
Ridley Scott had to fight with the producers all the time, because quite often the budget would go up. Right? Every day that he extended something, it did something, the studio producers, that's why there are some people who will say CIG needs a publisher.
Right.
I don't agree with it. But there are people who feel like, well, they need a publisher because a publisher will set a hard line and that'll be it. Right. But if we look at that model, whenever we've seen publishers set a hard line, what have we seen happen? We've seen games come out that aren't finished, or we wait 2-3 years for the final product still, even though you have something in your hand.
Then we're going to say, after the game comes out,
it should have.
Oh, this game had so much potential. It had, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
They should have waited.
That's the usual thing. Yeah.
They should have waited. They should have took more time to finish it up. Yeah. You can't win either way, right? Okay.
Can't win either way.
Let's move on. You got the next one.
All right. So long alpha phase. Star Citizen has been in an alpha phase for nearly 11 years. Guys, I went to college when... Okay, anyway. Raising concerns among backers about the project's progress and the lack of a final product, according to AT Level.
Yeah. Now, this is one that we're all familiar with, right? Yeah. Go ahead. What are you going to say? What are you going to say?
I was going to say, I started college. I went through the full 3 official stages of academic qualifications, and I'm almost done. Yeah. And the game is still in. I'll have my PhD before the game finishes.
That's very true. That's very true.
But yeah, it is quite an anomaly. I can personally attest to the fact that research takes a long time, and discovering the unknowns and getting to a point where you're going to count something as a finish line, even when you keep moving the goalpost, it's frustrating for everybody.
Yeah.
I'm sure it is even for Chris, even though he may not openly admit it.
Yeah.
I remember 3 years ago, I think I wanted to finish, my stuff. And here I am, almost 7 years still doing my research. My supervisor, he said, he finishes his stuff in 3 years. And I'm like, okay, good for you. But he's the one who's telling me to do more. So it's like, dude, what do you mean?
Yeah.
But I say all these things because there is a sacrifice that is always taken. And sometimes the unknown path continues to be unknown until either, I'm not going to say they're going to run out of money, because I think there's always going to be new people coming online. But until there gets to a point where even the leadership realize that these amount of things, and I think they've started to do that now, according to a video that Space Tomato gave a couple of weeks ago, not last week, but week before. They're starting to realize this, even when they set out with the whole Star Citizen 1.0.
Yeah.
So leadership, and I'm talking about the highest point, it's starting to realize, okay, these are the main attributes that we need to execute, or at least reach to 90% of completion. And then whatever comes after that is confetti. But we need to finally release. So of course, there's always going to be a lot of unknowns. It's never going to end. That's the whole nature of creativity and research. But it needs to at least become some kind of solidified product before you continue on in and with the unknown.
Yeah. This is a tough one. I was reading what Q was saying. He said it's been almost 14 years by his math. Actually, it's been longer than that if you want to go to the full length of it. Let me tell you why I don't agree with your number, Q. Chris Roberts started working in CryEngine, not in 2012, but in 2011. It was 2011 when I think he started his original work on the presentation that we saw. So if you really want to be technical about it, let's go all the way back and say that it's been 16 years. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Which is not the reality. Okay. The announcement was made in 2012. The company started in 2012, 2013 with a handful, maybe 8 to 16 people. Now, there are plenty of game companies that build games with that many people. Hello Games is a small team. But the reality is that what they needed to be able to produce a game like this takes a lot more than just those 8 to 16 people. So for me, this is me, you all. This is me. My clock for Star Citizen doesn't really start until 2014, 2015. And there was a reason why I say that. Let me tell you, what are you going to say?
No, continue.
Okay. The reason I'm going to say this is this. CIG had contracted several companies to subcontract under them during their earlier years. I think there were 5 or 6 companies that they worked under. And if you remember, this is when the whole thing came out about the metrics being off with some of the companies and stuff that had done, like they did the Arena Commander and the Star Marine stuff, and it was all whack. And it's almost like, to a certain degree, they kind of restarted and brought everything under the umbrella of their company that year. Now, to me, that's when I think things got serious. I could be wrong. Again, I'm saying that's my assessment. But even in light of that, it has been a long time for an alpha. Now, it's a long time for an alpha because we're involved in it. Because normally, most of us would not be seeing any of this stuff. We would be seeing an early access or a beta version of a game. And I don't know how many of us have ever been in an alpha from the very beginning. And it's very different. Are you excusing basic mechanics still not working after 10 years? I'm not excusing anything. I'm just talking about why there's so much time. I'm not making any excuses. I'm not behind the scenes enough or I don't have enough information I'll give you something very basic, Q, to your question. I don't have enough information to explain why elevators don't work. One of the oldest bugs in the game. Oldest bugs. And in all of our brains, elevators should be working. And I think that if it was that easy, elevators would be working. But there is something. Now, is it coding? Go ahead, Kalrati. You're itching to say something. Go ahead, jump in.
I can comment on that because I was playing Dead Space. And I brought a fire extinguisher to an elevator. Because I wanted to use this thing on the other floor. So it wasn't a loading level or anything like that. It was a simple lift, Griffin. To just go 10 feet high. Mm-hmm. I decided, you still had your tractor and everything, but I decided to just rest this thing down and get my weapon ready. And this thing clips through. I mean, yes, Dead Space is an old game, but it doesn't mean that the concept of an elevator and physics has been erased and the horrors that come with it. So when I think it was Ali Brown or Chad McKinney had made a comment on this a couple of years ago, after experiencing that, I was like, so this is what they're talking about when it comes to elevators and the horrors. I don't know if, for example, even with the industry standard, there is a standard in engines now that have kind of diminished difficulty of this. I would hope to this point that there is, but who knows? So continue. There's and I'm going back to the 2014-2015 period on another point too. Many of you guys remember when they did Pupil to Planet, and many of you also remember, and I think this is really cool because Richard Trier mentioned this at CitizenCon last year, which I think people who may have come in later were unaware of.
A lot of people came in on the story, and many old folks, we came in under the idea of 100 systems, right? Right. Now, when I tell you 100 systems, how many places do you think we can go when I say 100 systems? That's just stars, but you got all the planets and moons, right? So what do you think most people think when we say there's going to be 100 systems in the game? How many places do you think they can go?
I think after the games we've experienced, I think I don't think players are as not excited, but
right,
as creative.
All right, well,
to think that we can go to so many places.
Pre-Starfield.
Yeah.
How many places do you think people were thinking when we said we had 100 systems? Probably thousands, right? Probably thousands.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, you got moons, you got all this stuff, right? Okay. If you didn't know, there were only supposed to be 90 landing places you could go. 90. That's all there was. But when we had the engineer who worked at CIG who came up with us being able to land anywhere on a planet, that had changed the dynamics of the game that we were going to be playing. Chris had always said he wanted to do it, but he said it'd be years later before we could do that. It came ultra soon, ultra early. Mm-hmm.
Do you think when they made that revelation, do you think there would have been some devs who didn't want that kind of thing? They may have thought.
I'm sure
work that they would have to do.
I've told this story before. George Lucas, I'm gonna go to my guy again. When he was going to do Phantom Menace, George Lucas came in with all the storyboards, set them out, and he had all his tech people, all his brains, and he says, "This is what we're going to do," and they're all looking, doing like this, and he walks out, and they're like, "How the hell are we going to do this? We don't even know how to do it." Okay. I'm sure that when the original plan of having just those 90 locations that we wouldn't get to fly to, that would be automated landing, just like Starfield. I'm not throwing any shade on Starfield because that's what Starfield did. But I'm sure that once he said, we are now going to make it so that people can go anywhere they want, there was a whole lot of freaking like, oh my God, how do we pull this off now? And you couldn't help but realize that had to change the dynamics of the development of the project at that point, right? Because you've opened Pandora's box up. Now, some people may say, well, they just should have stuck to the original plan. And maybe if they had, maybe we'd have the game by now. But the reality of it is that somebody chose to say, we can make something that is not Starfield, right? That is different, that pushes the limits of gaming. And it definitely became like a catch-22. I'll just put it that way, right? It's both a good and also probably had tremendous negative impact on game development time, right, and resources and stuff. So yeah, it's a tough one. Okay, let's move on. We've spent way too much time on these topics. Are we almost at 8 o'clock yet? Okay, we're getting there. 7 o'clock. Okay, we're almost there.
Yeah.
Bugs and crashes. The prevalent. Is this one of you or me? This is me, right? Or this is you? This is. Who read the last one? Yeah. Okay, go ahead. You go ahead.
All right. So bugs and crashes. The prevalence of bugs, particularly the 30K era, has been a significant source of frustration for backers who have requested that CIG prioritize fixing these issues, according to change.org.
Yeah, change.org. Ooh, somebody went to change.org and posted something. Now that's deep.
To do this.
That's deep. Somebody said, hey, we're going to change.org because they need to get themselves together.
Official.
That's pretty deep. I was surprised to see that one was on change.org. Yeah, bugs, crashes, and fixes. Agree. I mean, they're there. I wrestle with this one, and I know, guys, you're going to say, oh, Griff, you're just making an excuse for them, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. I struggle. If I've said CIG's, if I believe that CIG is producing something that is industry standard and like what everybody else has done, I would say absolutely the bugs and crashes thing is just a joke. That it is a hot mess. But the thing that keeps me from saying that is that I believe that CIG is trying to do something that is not industry standard, that is going to change gaming. And that gives me room to say, okay, they're staying alpha. They're telling us it's alpha. And if I, being somewhat of a computer person, understand what alpha is, which is proof of concept and ideas and trying things out, well, that is what we're doing. As much as I would love for it to move to beta, which this game is not, I know there are times when the game feels very beta. I know there are times when I have great gaming experiences and I play it and everything just feels so right. And it makes me feel that the game is someplace better than it is. And then you get that patch that reminds you of the fact that, nope, I lied. It's not that game that you think it is. So to me, that's my sanity point. For me, I don't know, Kalrati, you give me your thought. Who is that? Senor Mookle, thank you. Mook, thank you. Appreciate you. Give me your thoughts. How do you wrestle with this whole bugs, alpha problem stuff?
So I try to look at it not just as an old backer, but also based on the demographic of persons that are coming in now, but also based on possibly what the developers are experiencing. Because, for example, those who started early on with a smaller version of Star Citizen and grew with it, I think there are those, well, just like you said, we retain that patience, but there would have been also some, rightfully so, that would have kind of veered off, not really veered, but also got impatient, frustrated, right? Of course, the usual thing is to say, okay, take a break and try something else, which is valid also. But going back to the other perspective as well, those who are coming in now, yes, we can say that they should be aware that it's alpha. At the same time, CIG wants to continue to make money, to continue the development.
Yeah.
So CIG can't say those things, right? So as a result, they may have to kind of bend a little bit to mitigate some of these bugs that are causing some of these errors. Of course, that's how we got the 30K server error recovery and all those things to help reduce or mitigate frustrations. But at the same time, it also made me wonder that some of the developers, perhaps when they are doing their own testing, who's to say that they aren't facing certain barriers to testing certain features when, well, due to some bugs that we don't even experience. So perhaps some of the developers who are developing features and testing certain features, they're facing bugs of their own because of how large this game possibly is. I mean, I can't really say that for sure. I'm just speculating. But because of the enormous, or well, the gargantuan scale of Star Citizen, and when I say that in terms of, I mean in terms of the programming and the code, presumably, then I think it's also valid to say that part of these frustrations or the prevalence of these bugs can also be can also lead to frustrations that are called out by some of the developers. They have certain features that they may want to fix, but these are also barred by certain to be.
Don't get too soft. Don't get too soft because your mic's clipping. Your mic's clipping. Okay.
Oh, right.
Say the last part.
So, so I was just saying that in terms of the developer side, speculation once again, it could also be that some developers possibly may have certain features, or even the QA, that they may want to address or test on their end, but they may also be facing bugs of their own that have been there for years and years and years. So these frustrations may not only come from the community, but if I'm on a construction site and I see some kind of barrier or a tool or some kind of thing that's blocking my path, and I want to do my job, and the next guy, or not next guy, but that particular task wasn't done yet, then I would kind of like that task to be done and be out of my way so I can continue doing my job. Otherwise, they may pull me from doing this to doing something else, which may unfortunately build frustration. So I think in these kinds of things, they're valid for a number of options.
Yeah. Okay. You covered that. I'm not going to even elaborate. I think that's a good point that you made. We're going to get through these real quick because we got to get ready to take our commercial break in just a hot second. In-game rewards. Backers have also raised concerns about issues with in-game rewards, including events where promised rewards were not delivered or where customers were blamed for problems, according to the Better Business Bureau. It's interesting to see how this has moved from
Yeah.
Industry thing to, the change.org nonprofits, and now we're at the Better Business Bureau. And I remember, I think this might have came up back when we were doing like the stuff with the CDF armor where people weren't getting things. They were out there doing those missions.
Think so, I remember Better Business Bureau.
Yeah. Okay. So tell people that maybe weren't around back then what happened with those when people were doing the mission, it wasn't dynamic, but the dynamic mission at the time, and people weren't getting stuff.
Yeah. So if I can recall, and that was with Xenothreat, was it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. So if I can recall as correctly or as properly as I can, when we did the mission, we were supposed to get certain rewards, like the CDF armor in our account, but it was taking some time for CIG to award us or deposit that into our account.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I recall, the provision of that item, it was not an automatic thing. They were still doing it manually, even I think up until 2 years ago. So it was taking some time, but I think to that extent, I can't remember what happened after that, but I think that was one of the things behind all of this.
So it wasn't like some people got it and then some people didn't. When they heard other people got it, then they were like, hey, so-and-so got their armor. How come I didn't get mine? Wasn't it something like that?
Yeah.
Like
Griff, raise your volume a little bit. I
raise it up. Okay. They told me I was too hot. Okay. I was saying, wasn't that the issue that, like, because it was done manually, some people got the armor and then other people heard they got it and they're like, where's mine? How come so-and-so got his? It was something like that. Okay.
Yeah. And I don't think we knew the criteria or the sequence of why some persons were getting it first versus those who weren't.
Yeah.
So that was also creating some contention as well.
Yeah. Cypher, I don't think this is it's not a stupid question by any means. And his question was, why would they just not focus on current features and not push more features until they have made the product as stable as they can and people can enjoy the current features and the gameplay loops? That's a very good question. I think that seems like the most rational thing to do. But we've had some people on and some people we've talked to who are developers who have told us that. And I remember one example that Grollo used is he's been doing developing for a while. He said that when you're building something in development, he used the example of like if you're building a table from IKEA. He said, as you're building it, you put something together. He says, you never put the screws in at 100%. You may put them in like at 80%, 90%, because if you put the screws in at 100%, when something's off, then you have to go back and undo all the stuff you did because it had an effect on it. And some of us who put crummy furniture together, we know about that. He says you only go so far. You leave yourself room. And I know it would be very easy to say, well, let's start out with the base game. Now, we've seen some examples of things in the industry where that has been done. And one of the classic ones is something that I participated in from beta, which was Elite Dangerous. Elite Dangerous did that. Elite Dangerous put out their game. They had a long-term range of what they wanted the game to be. And we all got in it, bought it, played it, enjoyed it, finished product. More stuff's going to come. Well, when more stuff came, one of the first things we got was their first iteration, right? The big patch that came out that we all bought into. And then they brought in engineers and some other things. But then when they wanted to continue the big plan they had, like to go to console, They tried to do that, and then when they wanted to move from console to something else, guess what? When Odyssey came up, they hit a roadblock. The ideas that David Brandon had about being able to get up and walk around in your ship and being able to do the same things that we do in Star Citizen, guess what? They hit a roadblock. Their engine was not capable to deliver that. And so, as you know, there were many people who felt that the promises that were being made by Frontier weren't delivered. They had finished ships. They had 20 something ships in their game total, but they had not gotten a ship in like the last 6 or 7 years. And so they had problems too, even when they did the finished, polished product, produced it. And yet, because they screwed the screws all the way in at the time they did, there was satisfaction for, a good about 5, 6, 8 years. But when they needed to migrate further and bring the dream further, boom, they hit a wall. It has just been just this last year now that they have reassessed their whole thing. And now they are now trying to do the things that Star Citizen does, such as building space stations, such as do bases. And their clock started at the same time. The difference is the path that each one took. And there were a lot of people who played Elite Dangerous for many years, were very happy with it, and many of them who have left. We've got people in our group Dark Knight, Colossal, Dig That 32. These guys have like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 hours in that game. They don't play it anymore. They deal with this buggy mess over here more than dealing with that polished, finished game over there. So I understand it. It does seem like the thing to do, but evidence is kind of shown. I played EVE online for many years. I played EVE from their 3rd year all the way to their 10th year. That game had bugs all the way through its 10th year. It was buggy stuff wasn't working. We could play it, but we had problems with it back then. So trying to find that model that mirrors that, that it's a finished product on scale. I'm talking about scale MMO stuff that does that. I think there's been very few out there, especially if you're trying to do some of the things that CIG is trying to do in their game. Okay. All right. One last one, then we're going to take our break. Customer support. I think this one's on you.
All right. So customer support. Oh, 1 second. Alexa, I wasn't talking to you. Yeah. Literally activated.
I know. Mine does that.
It was so weird. Okay. So customer support. CIG's customer support has been criticized for being unhelpful, blaming customers for issues and refusing to assist with problems unless they involve purchasing items according to the Better Business Bureau.
Now, this one surprised me because I've never heard this before. Now, I'm trying to figure out how you get customer support, but you've never purchased anything. I don't know how that. I mean, what kind of customer support would you want if you didn't buy something? Is that making sense to you?
So I'm thinking. This is my assumption. They're probably going to customer support to ask about some kind of in-game issue as opposed to account. Because, for example, I remember back in when we first got the baby PU, that was in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Sometime in 2016, my Aurora, right, that was the ownership that I had. Every single time I would spawn it and I would fly it out. After approximately, it was a very hard number. After, I think, 5 seconds, the ship will become unresponsive.
Okay.
Spoiler alert, it was the actual ship.
Got you.
And it was no way for CIG to reset. We didn't have character reset at the time. So it was either I had to wait until the next patch or ask someone else to use my ship or use their ship or buy another ship. So as a result, some of these in-game issues were, a bit of a problem. So I think this is where the whole thing is. In terms of leveraging or kind of thinking, they're only getting the help if it's a purchased item and not, something that they purchased in the game.
Yeah. There's some good comments here, and I think that it's backing up what you're saying. Clyde, thank you. Q, thank you. And they're basically saying when people are calling for something that has not about a purchase, but they're calling customer support like they're having a problem with the game or something like that, and they're being told, oh, that doesn't have anything to do with us. So then they feel like, oh, unless I bought something, that's the only time customer support is going to deal with me. Versus like what would be considered like a technical support kind of thing. Which is interesting. CIG doesn't have like a quote unquote technical support, I guess. I mean, in some ways it does fall under when you do a ticket, I guess, when there's a problem, but if you don't know and you see customer support, I can understand the default that people would go there and think that that's where they would get their answers. Because a lot of people don't know about the issue council or they don't know about putting in a ticket.
It's not very, very prevalent or as popularly used, I think. For other games. Yeah.
And people may not know about putting in a ticket or something like that. Yeah, that's a very good point. Somebody said something to me, my name popped up, Griffin. It flew by so quickly I didn't get to see what it was. Somebody was trying to tell me a message. Okay. All right. We have Griff tell them your hanger issue. Yeah, okay, Admiral. Yeah, I know. I did a ticket. I did a ticket for it already.
You have a hanger issue?
Yeah, I'm locked out. No, it wasn't too many. I had 5 items out, but Togi warned me ahead of time. He said, Griff, I think it's not working. And so I said, well, let me try. It was out for 4 days. No problem. I wasn't doing anything with them. They were just there. And I came back that 5th day and boom, can't get in the hangar. So it's done deal.
Oh, no.
So I have to wait till the next patch. And I've done every solution, y'all. I know y'all gonna send me some suggested ideas. I've done everything. I've done.
I'm the only one.
I've removed my stuff, done my stuff, reset my character, spat, prayed. I've done everything. So I'm just waiting on the next patch. Thank God the patches are monthly. I ain't got to wait 90 days. So I know it's coming. I'm not too worried about it.
The weird thing about these things is that persistence
is persistent. Yeah, it is persistently keeping me out of my locker. But guess what? I have 2 alts, so I ain't mad, y'all. Okay, I'm able to move around still without too much of a problem. Okay, we are going to take a very quick commercial break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk with you guys a little bit more and have a little bit more fun. So just stick in there with us, just one commercial, and we'll be back. So see you in a second. Okie dokie. If you are here, that means you are a supporter and a subscriber to Soul Citizens. And as always, we want to tell you thank you so much for your generous contributions and your support and your cheering us on for the many years that we've been on. We've been on 5+ years now, and it's been a long time. Kalrati, how long have you been with us now? You've been with us how long? Since when?
About 3 going on 4 years.
Oh my God. Oh God, you're an old veteran. Okay.
Oh man.
Well, we appreciate you guys being here. We hope you're enjoying the conversation today. I know it's a little bit different show that we're having, but we're going to start now talking about the community's complaints. We've been talking about the stuff that's been posted professionally, but now we're going to talk about the things that we know about within the community that folks talk about. So stick around for that. Next week, we're doing a special show called The Real Deal. It's going to be about people talking about, oh, the game's being too gamified. Oh, blah, blah, it's too arcadey. We're going to talk about what does it mean for Star Citizen to be real? And should it be real? The real deal. That's going to be next week. Okay. Alrighty. Well, welcome back. And we are going to continue our conversation now. We are moving from the industry complaints and the industry criticisms and critiques. And now we're going to be moving to the community ones that most of us are familiar with. And again, we're going to be looking for you guys to give us your thoughts on some of these subjects that are coming up next. So here we go, Kalrati. You ready?
And don't worry, they won't be deleted by Knight Rider.
They will not be deleted by Knight Rider. I know. All right. The 30-day ban. Okay. We're going to talk about this just a little bit. Okay. As you all know, and I was surprised to see this. There are times when something happens in the game that is considered by CIG as being an exploit or something that goes against the TOS. And one of the things that takes place from time to time is the 30-day ban. And my question, Kalrati, on this for you is, how do you feel about it? Is a 30-day ban, how far should that go? There are people complaining about 30-day bans, right? I've known people who got banned. They said that they weren't even a part of whatever was going on, or they did something not knowing that it was an exploit, and then they got banned, right? I think it was last year, we had there was this one big group of ban that they did. I forget how many people it was, like 100, 200, 300 people, something like that. That was a big ban. But there are a lot of people that don't get banned, right? So what do you think brings about the point where somebody gets the ban? And should people be banned? Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what bug led to this. It was some kind of a bug. I think it was a mule bug that was leading people to getting a lot of money. And one time, someone had sent me, it was 15 million alpha UEC. I literally asked this guy, where did you get this money from? And I sent it right back. Don't make me part of whatever it is that you did and try to hide your money by giving it to me. No. I'm not part of your shell company. No, sir.
Yeah. Oh, that's something. But that's something to think about, right? I mean, that's something to think about, right? Because a lot of times people will just send people money, right? And sometimes it's just people being cool. Right. But there are people who are trying to cover their tracks. They'll exploit millions
the money.
And then they try to pass it off, and then guess what? What happens? You end up being like, oh, that must be one of his friends. You get banned too. Right. I mean, were you nervous about that? Somebody sent you that money?
I was. I mean, I know that CIG could have looked at,
the path, mm-hmm. Follow the money,
concentration points to the person who would have gotten the money, but no way. No. But to your main question,
mm-hmm.
The comments made by some persons I think are valid. Okay, it's subjective once again, because some persons will sometimes say that they're testing this exploit because
mm-hmm.
they want CIG to see it faster. At the same time, some of the devs and issue council is just a click away, a couple clicks.
Yeah.
It's been possible for some time to make an issue council and mark it as an exploit.
Yeah.
Zolarex and his team with the issue council, these things are usually prioritized also. So if it is an exploit and you mark it under exploit, it usually goes to them usually a lot faster. I would think.
Yeah.
Right. So to keep using it until CIG sees it isn't always the best explanation or the best reason to continue to use it.
We had somebody do that.
That's my take on it.
We had somebody who came on and told us they were mad because they got banned because they found the exploit. It's like, well, did you report it? And they're like, yeah. So then what'd you do? Well, I just kept doing it. I was like, I just but they were mad that they got banned, and the exploit was something that was making them kill players. That was the kicker.
Oh boy!
It was an exploit that helped them to kill players. And they didn't see the, I don't want to say the moral compass, but they didn't see it. Why should I be getting banned? It's in there. Okay, so anyway, yes. And Q raises a good point here. So this was my next question when I talked about this ban and when should it happen. There are some of us who will say it's good that these things happen because they're finding the problems now while we're in alpha. But then you want people to be able to come in and play the game so that they can test, but they're being prevented from doing that. So how do we balance the fact of when people is that why there's only a 30-day ban versus if you do, if you break the TO, you're out of here, that's it, no coming back? Is that what it is? We're kind of that middle ground somewhere that satisfies some form of response, discipline, and at the same time doesn't get rid of people. I don't know.
Yeah. I honestly think that's the case because some persons, like you said, they would say, okay, it's alpha. And as I think you would have pointed it out as well. But at the same time, I think that's where they are lenient to some extent because they still want persons to have a good time. But they don't want to ban persons outright because, yes, they're the ones who would have identified the bug or may have been part of the persons who would have helped to, activate or induce a triage for the bug. But if they see the activity as being done repeatedly, then okay, we're going to give them a warning with it bad, but we're not going to induce some kind of permanent ban. Some kind of
yeah.
So it's definitely tough because 30 days can be different for many. 30 days for someone who's playing every day it will have a different effect for someone who's playing every other day.
Yeah.
Two persons may have done the exploit. So that feeling of having a 30-day ban done or justified, but CIG's decision to do a 30-day ban because they think that that's the middle.
Make sure you speak up. Make sure you speak up.
Oh yeah. So it's CIG's decision, I think, to choose 30 days.
Yeah.
Because that's what they think. I think is the middle ground.
Yeah.
For this whole thing.
Clyde says GTA had one of the best approaches to that. If you received money from someone who was glitching or duping, they would wipe your account clean of money. Banning is tough because you can always argue ignorance, but ignorance does not make one exempt from the rules. So just giving accomplices a clean slate while banning the main offender worked well.
And that's exactly why I gave that man back his money. I was not being part of that. Thank you, Clyde. That's exactly why.
CC Creator says, I think that the time limit of a ban is because people are paying real money for their ships. And there are laws in other countries that affect them. So in other words, if I paid money for my ships and you banned me from the game, but I've paid, this is something I supposedly own. Now, it'd be really interesting to see what the TOS says about who really owns that thing. You know what I'm saying? Who the property, the virtual rights or property, intellectual property of it is, because I don't know if the TOS says, yeah, you bought it, but if you break certain rules, you lose your rights to ownership. I don't know how that works. I really don't. Unless somebody in chat knows what the deal is. Don't tell me what you think it is. If you know what it is, then let me know. Okay, but we'll have to see what the rule is for that. But that's interesting. Okay, so that's the 30-day ban. Let's move on to this one. Ooh.
Uh-oh. The game's decision makers.
the real decision makers, right? Okay. over the years that I've been here, I've heard so much about marketing, from the early days when Sandy Roberts was over it. And then she left and they brought some other people in. And then some other people came in. And then back in January of this year, some other people came in. And when we say marketing, there's always been this question of, I don't want to say the ethics of how CIG does things, but maybe that is what it falls into. The way they market. Let's use, for example, when they put out a trailer and the trailer shows all these different activities and things going on, but then you come to the game and you want to do the activity, but something's broken, or you want to do something, you go to that location and nothing's happening or whatever. How do you feel? Do you think that the marketing is overly done? Is it deceptively done? Do you think that it's done, but people don't understand that it's based upon this is what we're shooting for done? How do you think that comes across?
So I would start off by saying this. About 3 years ago, I was reading a comment on this whole thing with regards to marketing and how they commercialize and sell the pledges and those things to keep the game well marketed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my response to that was, and the person was saying, okay, this isn't how CIG used to be, etc.
Mm-hmm.
My response to it was, unfortunately, based on how the trends was going and based on what CIG realized that the amount of money that they may have needed to raise and resources that's needed,
Mm-hmm.
I honestly said that we may get to a point where CIG has a hybrid model where we will have to learn to not really like the things CIG does. They may not become an EA. They may not become or do those kinds of actions for
Mm-hmm.
certain monetization practices. But to get to the point of Star Citizen's completion, they will have to do certain things that we will. And that was along the lines of marketing.
Okay.
I don't like all the things that marketing does, but bet your bottom dollar they're making a lot of money for the company, so they know what they need to do. Right?
It's funny you say that, right? 3 years ago, I predicted CIG was probably maxing out the community and that we would start to see the funding start to level off. Not necessarily taper off, but the next year may not be a record-breaking year. You know what I mean? They'll bring in money, but it's going to start leveling off. It's been 10 years, blah, 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 blah. How wrong was I? Okay. Regardless to how we may feel, numbers don't lie. And somebody over there knows something about what they're doing to raise money. Now, does that mean that they know how to remember we were talking about managing work and managing people? Do those same people understand the impact that it has on its community? Right?
Yeah.
Do they understand that there's a certain sentiment that might be building or brewing or exists within the community? Maybe they do. Maybe they're willing to take a percentage. Maybe there's a percentages as long as they don't cross this threshold. We can stretch it this far, but if we cross this threshold, that's the breaking point. So they know we'll hover at a certain point. This is first time I remember this happening. First time I really remember it happening was the year they wanted to charge us to watch CitizenCon.
Oh, God.
Do you remember that? Okay.
Yeah.
That was the first time I remember that the freaking roof, set the roof on fire. People went nuts. Now, it seems pretty obvious to me, and it seemed back then obvious. You've been providing these live events for people globally to watch for years. And this year, you want to say, if you want to watch it, you have to pay $10. Now, to me, I was like, who thought of that? Right? Now, there are some people who will say, well, that's one of those testing the waters moment to see whether or not that elasticity is there, and that there'll actually be a great amount of people who will say, sure, I'll pay the $10, right? But the pushback on that was so heavy that went out the window very quickly, right? And it's not the first time we've seen that. The most recent thing we saw was with the thing that came up with the AI thing, right? With the blades, right?
Yeah.
And my thing, when people talk to me about it, I said, hey, vote with your dollars, vote with your voices. That's what I told people. If you were asking me about it, I got some phone call to call Chris Roberts. I don't call, write, post. And if you don't like it, don't buy it. It's simple. Now, my question to you becomes this. Because this issue of marketing and money, how do we wrestle with personal responsibility? Yes, I'm speaking as a conservative right now. How do we deal with personal responsibility? Because the reality is you ain't got to buy nothing. They can advertise all they want. You ain't got to buy nothing. But at the same time, boy, when I saw that Idris commercial, I said, man, that's a good looking ship.
I just need, oh man.
Right.
I need it.
So how do we deal with that? How do we deal with that? Because my thing is, and I've had people say this before, some people stick to it. I'm not spending any more money, or I'm not spending any more. Grimm said something on his show last week. It was really cool. He says, I have certain goals that I would like to see them achieve. And when they achieve those goals, that's when I step up and throw a couple more bucks in because they've taken it a little bit further. He said, when they're not doing the things that I think that are meaningful to me as a player, I feel comfortable. I don't spend money. But I've also heard plenty of people, I'm not spending any more money. Or we've had the people that go on Spectrum and we're just going to shut down until Pyro comes out. I'm like, yeah, okay. Where does it land for us? What is it that compels us, even though we feel a certain kind of way? Is it that the marketing is that good? Because I've known plenty of people say, I'm not spending nothing at IAE. I'm not spending plenty of money. Next thing you know, I bought. Yeah, I picked it up. What's the scoop?
I honestly think that, I'm not trying to put CIG on a pedestal here.
Uh-huh.
There are some really smart people in this world when it comes to understanding human psychology.
Yeah.
And when it comes to data analytics, there are some really, really smart people.
Agreed.
And quantifying human emotion. I'm not going to call it addiction, but human emotion.
No, stop. Stop.
Yeah, I'll stop.
Because I was going to say this earlier. Yeah. We also have to be willing to admit that Star Citizen visually is the epitome of dopamine. You know what I'm saying? That game can be busted and broken, and all you got to do is get in your cockpit and fly and see that freaking sunrise, or see that freaking Valakar, or see that laser beam come down from that station, or walk around on your favorite ship, and the freaking dopamine freaking fires off. Now, to Kalrati's point, there are some smart people in marketing. Go ahead and finish your thought.
Yeah, so there's some smart people in marketing, and I am not going to doubt that they understand human psychology, being able to quantify these emotions. I'll give you a quick example. A friend and colleague of mine, he was using a mathematical function under something called Kansai engineering to quantify human behavior toward the shape of a bottle. Because when it comes to beverages, you can quantify how someone feels when they look at a cup, the shape of a cup, the shape of a bottle. So for his project, he was looking at a way to quantify human behavior to morphing or developing a mathematical function to create the most optimal shape for a bottle based on Caribbean culture. So as a result, when it comes to ships, when it comes to marketing, I do not doubt that there are some really capable persons who know how far to push the boundary or stretch. And like you said, Griff, make sure that it's elastic enough so that when they do something that to us is very, very obvious that they shouldn't do, they know that it is still elastic to get back to a certain point and say, hey, we recognize X, Z, and we recognize the company or the community feels a certain way, so we are going to continue along these. So, yeah.
I mean, Kalrati's hitting it on the head. I got it. Listen, I've told this story before. I was really budgeting and watching how I spent my money until 2016, or no, it was 2017. I was sitting in Austin, Texas, in a bar at VerseCon, and that freaking 600 I flew on the screen. I didn't care what the ship did. They didn't even show what the ship did. All they did was they showed a model with some dudes rubbing their hands on that sucker, and my money went zing and right out the window. Didn't know what. That was the only time I ever did that. Usually I wait and see. Let me see what it does. Let me. It went right out the window. So I think that marketing is much more, like you said, it's much more. It's more intensive than what most people think of. They think it's that you're waving the shiny ship. I remember reading about, and I never noticed this. I remember this when it was a long thing with marketing, but they were talking about how there are certain colors in the fast food industry that get used, red and yellow. It's used in McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's. That color is associated to triggering things in your head to go. That's the reason why they pick those colors. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? And so to your point, someone knows that's tapped into the dream of all of us gamers who have dreamed of what it means to go to space. We've all been influenced by media, society, watching a space shuttle take off, watching Elon Musk ships go off, watching Star Trek, watching Star Wars. All those things are in our subconscious. And there are marketing aspects of that people understand that this is a dream of people. And it is tough. It is really tough. But I still have to put the personal responsibility on people that if you're getting frustrated, and especially if it's because of money, stop spending money. Just give yourself a break. Yeah, just give yourself a break. It'll be there. It'll be there. For those of us who were here in the early days, there was no ship rentals. There was no in-game purchases of ships. The only way you could freaking get a ship was you had to drop money for it. That ended a long time ago. You don't have to buy it. You don't have
the irony.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The irony behind that, Griff, and to Q's point, which is a very valid point, where he was saying, okay, if you were to spend a certain amount of money, then compared to like spending a much smaller amount, it's not really much of a big deal to spend that smaller amount, and it keeps adding up.
Yep.
So surprisingly, I told myself, because it was at this point a year or so before they introduced ship rentals, I told myself, okay, I'm close to reaching concierge, but the moment they start making ships available, that's it for me. It wasn't out of frustration.
Right.
It was like, okay, I think I'll get to a point where I'm satisfied with what I've contributed. And that happened. I think it was the first patch in January of 2018 or 17. They introduced ship rentals, and that was it for me.
That was it.
I melted all of my ships except for my Aurora MR, and I used all of the store credit for yearly subscriptions. So yeah,
that's pretty good.
And it wasn't out of frustration.
That's pretty good.
I felt satisfied.
That's pretty good. Shoot, if I melted all my ships, I'd have subscriptions for the next 50 years. Oh my God. Not a bad idea, though. I will admit, my purchases have all been melt. I've been melting and getting things, right? There's 3 ships I have in my hangar that I actually am willing to spend money on. There's only 3 ships in my hangar. Everything else has been a melt. Even I just got the Asgard recently. I had some low-level small things because I kind of came up with this rule about 3 years or 4 years ago where everything in my hangar cost more than, it was $300. Now I think almost everything in my hangar, everything I have is more than $300 if it's in my hangar. Anything less than that is stuff I'm willing to work for. Now, mind you, I'm an old dude. You're a young buck. I ain't grinding for stuff. I'm not grinding for squat. I don't mind grinding for a fighter, but I ain't grinding for no Orion. You can forget that. That's not gonna happen. Okay, that's not happening.
Oh, imagine how much it's gonna cost for the Idris when it comes.
Oh my God, I don't even think about it. Okay, let's move on to this next one. Concierge and Chairman's Club. Are you in either of these? Do you take a part of this now? Are you in that?
So I go. Oh, firstly, thanks Thrak for the gift.
Oh, Thrakazak. Yeah, hey, Thrakazak. Thank you for the community sub. Thank you. Oh, so, and Minx the cat also follow. Thank you, Minx. Thank you. Go ahead. What are you gonna say? I'm sorry.
So sometimes I go into those chats. Most of the time I tend to stay out, but I do kind of try to pay attention to the frustrations that they have. So, for example, I remember a couple months ago, they were asking about some kind of some kind of item, and I can't remember what it was, but the poets, but it was something along those lines. So I don't know if Griff, you'd like to chime in on that, but yeah, I tend to dabble from time to time.
Oh, Oh, okay. Yeah, I can toss in my 2 cents. DePorce is in here. DePorce, that's funny.
You said your name.
Yeah, spoke him up. There have been, for those of you who are not concierge or chairman's club, I know it may seem like, oh, it's the little hoy-toy people complaining. But here's the deal. CIG has, and just so you'll know, there are some supposed perks, and there are some perks that come along with people who are in concierge. One of the ones that I actually do like, and for me, it has been beneficial. For some people, they said they don't have this happen. But one of them is that when you do put in a support ticket, you have some people who work specifically on concierge people, and you get a response back fairly quickly. Most of the time, I get responses back within 24 hours. Unless it's during a peak time like IAE or Invictus, it might take 48 hours. I think the longest I ever waited once was 72 hours. And that's because everybody's flooding them at that time. But for those people who are concierge, and concierge means that you spent at least $1,000 in the game, they have their own store. Unlike the Pledge store, which we're going to talk about later, they have their own Chairman's Club store. And that store gives certain items, not everything. There are certain items that are considered Chairman's Club items. Like, I don't have them nearby, but there's like a t-shirt, there's a hat. It's got a little logo on it, a little Lions Chairman's Club thing. Very kind of a little cool thing for people who want to get something, right? Also, there are prices for those things that are usually discounted as well. Sometimes they have sales on them, things like that. And then they also will offer certain ships. So like, for example, when the normal ship sale ends, like let's say when Invictus ended, sometimes they'll do a thing where they say, well, if you're part of the Chairman's Club, these ships will still be on sale for another 5 days or another 10 days. Sometimes they're discounted a little bit, but that's usually what it is. It's more opportunity to spend more money. Okay, that's basically what it comes down to. Okay, you get an opportunity to spend more money. They do have their own area in Spectrum where they can communicate. They have their own thread with information and things there. And then there's newsletters that they get as well. The thing that has failed is that CIG has intended to, from time to time, kind of breathe life into it again, update it, do some new things, and they'll start on it, or we'll get an announcement about it, and we may get a first iteration of it, and then it just peters away. Now, I'm not sure what the reasons are behind this. I do know I can tie this into when we start talking about the Pledge Store a little bit, and I think that is our next subject. So I'm going to kind of tie this in with the Pledge Store a little bit. One of the problems in the early days that CIG had was that even though they marketed things like they had, in the early days, they had a shirt for Arena Commander, they had Squadron 42 shirts, things of that nature. But they had a very small team of in-house people that were managing those items. And this is when we were very few people in the game. And they could manage shipments and getting things out. You'd order something and you might have to wait a little while, but your stuff would show up. But as this grew, so did demand grow. They would run out of items. They'd be sold out very quickly. Some items came and went. We never saw them again. There's some stuff. You guys wouldn't believe how much stuff they've marketed in the past that you don't even see anymore. Do you remember, Kalrati, they had the die-cast models? They had the Constellation. Yeah, remember that? I missed that. I thought it was going to come back, and it never came back. There's all types of things that have come and gone over the years that they've produced. And so at one point, CIG was like, listen, we're not a marketing company. We're a company trying to produce a game, and we don't have the staff to dedicate to the thousands of people that are part of this game to be providing stuff. Because people have always asked this question, Kalrati, like, man, because I've said this, like if they put out real world shirts of every ship manufacturer, I'd been bought my Origin shirts a long time ago. You know what I'm saying? And I've always felt like, hey, that's a moneymaker. Why don't they do it? Well, yeah, it may be a moneymaker, but there's also a lot of work and labor. Some of you may remember that the CIG used to produce the Jump Point book. We call it Joint Point Magazine now. But at the end of the year, they would combine all the jump points into a hardbound book. Beautiful gloss, laminated pages. I mean, high quality, high production, full color. I mean, these are big books. They were like freaking this big. I mean, they were big, solid books, right? All this great data information and stuff for development. The books ran around, in Fast Card, I know you're in here, correct me if I'm wrong. Blade, I know you've got them. I want to say they ran around like $30, $35, but the freaking shipping on them sometimes was like $25, right? And a lot of this stuff came from overseas or whatever, or even if it was produced over here, well, people in Germany or the UK wanted them, they cost a lot of money to get back and forth. And this is not stuff that they ship out of in-house, with their own place. It wasn't a situation where they have a store that they ship this. They've got a staff of people that are managing a warehouse with all this stuff. This all was contracted work. So that became a real problem for them. So when you ask, like, why don't they make more stuff? And a lot of times we know the fans really do want more stuff. If you've gone to CitizenCon, Kalrati, do you know the longest line at CitizenCon is the merch table? The merch table. Anybody been to CitizenCon? You all know what I'm talking about. Listen, Serious Fun stood in line for 2 hours to get his RSI jacket. That stuff sells. Now, the first year they did in LA, that stuff was gone, dude. The first day they cleaned it out. The second day they had to bring more stock in. But this time they set up prepared, and people wait. I think Gio, Sub-Vigio told us that he waited 3 hours in that line because there was something he wanted. This is while CitizenCon's going on. Because he got in the line thinking it wasn't going to be that line. It took him forever to get through it. You know what I'm saying? So there is a desire for merchandise, for people to have something tangible in this virtual world we live in, right? But again, it's just not the time for that. And I'm sure there will be a time where that becomes another generator for funds for them. It seems like an obvious one, but there are reasons why they have not implemented it fully the way a lot of us would like to see them do. Let's go to the pledge store. Do you want to say anything about the concierge or Chairman's Club? Or you want to jump to the pledge store?
Oh no, you hit the nail on the head there. Yeah.
Okay. So pledge store. This has been a monster from the early, and I'm going to make mine real short and let Kalrati talk about this one. In the early days, if you weren't here, the pledge store was the bane of Star Citizen because people did not know about this being a Kickstarter. So they heard about the game, they came to the website, and they're like, what do you mean a ship is $500? That was the issue. And CIG, originally when you went to the site, it was like right there at the very beginning. They have ships up there and prices, and people were flipping out because nobody was paying over back in 2012. I mean, you weren't paying more than $49.95 for a game, a AAA game. And now you've got a ship for $125, $150, $250. And then if they kept scrolling over, they'd run into like an Orion for $350, and they'd run into, the Idris M at $1,300 or $1,200, whatever it was. And people were losing their minds back then. They just couldn't believe it. Now, the pledge store has expanded, right? We have way more stuff on it now than just ships. Back then, it was just ships. Kalrati, talk a little bit about like how this thing has expanded. We've got gear, we've got armor, we've got weapons, we've got all types of stuff, right? Subscriber items. And is there anything you think the CIG can do better when it comes to this with the store?
Yeah, so there have been some contradictions as well, because like you said, apart from ships, we have things that we use in the game. And there have been some contentions and some agreements, disagreements, some explanations as to why it's not really affecting the whole experience of the game. For example, apart from the ships, we have gear that some may say, all right, well, you have this weapon that you can automatically purchase and you can use on somebody, like a sniper or a particular type of sniper, so on and so forth, in addition to the gear, because it's not necessarily a skin, it's an actual item with actual performance spec. But at the same time, you have a kickback in terms of where some may say that, well, the chances of you using this on somebody else is not necessarily as high as that person experiencing and using it on an in-game NPC or in an environment where there isn't. As a result, it's not necessarily putting or making a disadvantage to some, creating some level of disadvantage because the probability of that interaction occurring isn't as high. Both points are valid to some extent, but it has not. It has preserved that level of contention, no matter who you may speak to, because one of the things that we're still waiting on is, well, being able to analyze or rather assess. Okay, if you have a particular item, what is the specs of it in game? So as a result, does it make sense? Or if these specs are putting someone else at a greater disadvantage in terms of their own personal progress compared to somebody else, then it kind of feels a bit unfair to sell it on the store. But again, it's something that I think that CIG is going to continue to contend with, because it sometimes also contradicts with balancing the game in terms of giving us things that we can actually get in the game, even though these things can be acquired in the game. It's just that different opinions create and preserve this level of contention that I don't think is going to end anytime soon. But to your point, when you were talking about the different items that can be made available for them to make more money,
Mhm.
that does not harm or does not create any kind of quote unquote disadvantage. Things like paints, things like skins, we'll have to see. I think CIG knows or may have an idea when the right time is going to be for them to put in more human resources to make those kinds of things possible. I
Okay.
think at this point they're just using what is already in the game, items, to make them available on the stores to some extent. Even though to us it may be, well, for some it may be damaging the game.
Mhm.
To others it may not. So it's back and forth depending on who you speak to.
One of the things for a long time was that CIG said that things that could be purchased off the store would be able to be found in game. And I haven't completely, one of the things I was really surprised on was seeing when they started bringing in, like, I remember the executive weapons, right? The gold ones, right? They started bringing variants of those into the game recently. Do you think that the subscriber store, well, not subscriber store, do you think that the pledge store, what will it morph into later? Will it remain something like we were talking about funding on Paul's show last week, and it asked me, what do I think the funding model will be in the future? I would like to see, I'm not saying this is what it's going to be, y'all, so please don't take this as this is what it's going to be in the future. I would rather what they would do in the future is that Squadron 42 be successful and bring in a lot of money, right? That's the first thing I want to see happen. Secondly, when this game goes to 1.0 or whenever it goes live, I would like the model to be that anytime they want to introduce a new ship into the game, that they come in just like concepts do now, that it become a concept. And if you want to get it then with cash, you can. But that's the only time you'll be able to get it with cash. After that, once it goes in, you got to get it by working for it in the game, because I think that keeps a game economy going inside. We know that there are a lot more ships that they want to introduce, and vehicles and other items. So to me, when it's at concept level, if you want to support development still, you do that. If not, once it comes into the game, people have access to it. They can earn it in game without a problem. They can continue to do cosmetics, right? Some people like the idea of knowing that when I log into the game, there are certain things that are there already, which is great. As long as it doesn't give people an advantage in any way, but just complements gameplay, I'm fine with that. But I know there are people who believe that CIG, as long as they can sell ships, they will sell ships. Oh, and I think they should be able to sell starter packages. Starter packages and concepts. Oh, yeah. Starter packages and concepts. That's it for me. Anything beyond that, I don't want them to do. But I'm just, if they do it and it works, fine. If people are willing to do it. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think the pledge store should pull back, or you think it's just going to kind of stay the way it is later on, or change?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to reiterate, what you said there. And also say, as Sinful said, take your word for law, because technically, guys, he was actually reading a CIG marketing email of what the intentions are.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is actually what's going to come into the game. So his word is law. This is a promise.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, going back to what my thoughts are, I do agree with you that I think that after Squadron 42's release, I hope they also market a lot of the Squadron 42 assets. They may not be everyone who will be playing Squadron, but heavily commercialize it, because as a single player game, they can do that on the pledge store as well. But going back to Star Citizen as a multiplayer, I would really like them to stress a lot on the things that don't have some kind of performance based specification tied. Like more paints, more skins, and they could be creative. I think also. I mean, not necessarily need to only be paints or skins. I can't really think of something, but I'm gonna leave it to the really, really intelligent marketing people who've been making a lot of money, breaking records. That I would like to hope that they have some kind of plan as well. But yeah, so that's my hope when it comes to the pledge store, how it being able to introduce us to more things that aren't or don't have as many performance specifications, to try and ultimately mitigate the image of what some in and out of the community may have to Star Citizen. Because yes, they are riding on that kind of good and bad, just so that the word of Star Citizen remains. But I would like to hope that that when Squadron 42 comes out, or when they've finally hit some really, really major milestones like dynamic silver meshing, or even close to 1.0, they get to a point where, okay, we can actually start riding on the more positive side of the marketing strategy we may.
Yeah. I do.
That may be.
I do have to wonder if their emphasis this year, from January till now, where there has been this slight, I don't want to say turning of the Titanic, but the shift that you and I talked about earlier has also lent itself to why we're seeing the finances this year increase. That player satisfaction by people coming to the game and performance being better, being able to do a little bit more than they were before, has allowed people to feel more confident or more willing to say, hey, versus when the game is not performing well and they're having bad experiences where they've kind of held back on their money. Now, mind you, there are probably new people coming in too. Most of my old folks have told me they're doing more melting than they are spending fresh cash. But I am just kind of wondering if the fact that the game is playing better for most people, it's still got its issues, don't get me wrong, y'all, but is that making people feel more willing to, because they are accelerating this year, they have brought in a lot of money and we're not even at the end of June yet. So it'll be interesting to see where we go in the future. We're going to hit this last topic, gang, and this one's kind of going to be a hodgepodge of things, and we're not going to cover them all probably thoroughly, but we're just going to touch on them. And I'm going to just ask Kalrati, he can just pick one off the list here. We don't have to do them in order. If there's anything on here that you feel that they could do better, that they could improve upon, what would you pick? Is there anything in here off the top of your head? And if you're thinking, I can kick us off. You let me know.
Yeah, well, so this progress tracker. So I'm just going to say that.
Yep, that's where I was going. Go ahead.
So I don't know if this is something that they can do better. If this is something that they should just ignore. But because yes, we do get it, that it's showing the culmination of all the features. It's not necessarily showing the progress.
Right.
But it's giving us a tracker of all a culmination of the features. Whether or not we can call it instead a feature tracker, and if just changing the name itself is going to have an effect on person's perspectives on it, who knows? Because again, given how agile of a decision they decided to make in terms of focusing on creating the stability of the game, I don't think, be wrong, I don't think that they are at a point where they can properly predict the progress of certain features.
You're cutting out, so make sure you speak up. Speak up.
Yeah.
You can't properly predict.
Yeah, I don't think that they can probably yet predict the progress of certain features because they're still working on two games at the same time. So take out the whole research that they're probably still doing for new features coming online. Because of this agility that they may still be very, very active in, calling it a progress tracker may only lead to further frustration. Call it a feature tracker or a culmination of features. These are the features that we want. I mean, persons will still ask when is it coming out, but just changing a name to something in terms of marketing has been known to have some lasting effects for either tangible and intangible products. So maybe that's the case that they may need to do until they can make better predictions. Who knows?
So let me play devil's advocate. I think that some of this comes from CIG's commitment to the dirty word that they put on themselves, and I'm not against it, but the word transparency. that they're trying to put something out there that lets people know, not just in the sense of gameplay where they are, but where development is, right? And so I agree with you that that word progress triggers people's heads, because when we hear progress and we see a line that goes from left to right, that tells us that something's ended or something's finished. It doesn't mean that this section of something is done and there's something else that's dependent upon. Yeah. So if we see the A2, right. So if we go to the ship line and we see the A2 and it ends in April, we say, oh, the A2 is coming out in May, you know. So, you know, maybe it's more of a development timeline, right? And I think that maybe because when the progress tracker came out, it wasn't very well explained, you know, because people had gotten used to the old roadmap, right? And the roadmap kind of was supposed to be that thing that said this quarter, this comes out, and then we took those same assumptions and put them onto the progress tracker, not realizing that there are dependencies tied into that, right? So I don't think taking it away is necessarily the thing, but I think that, like you said, it's got to be reframed in folks' minds to just say, hey, we're just showing you what folks are working on right now. Please do not look at this thing as a timeline, because it's not. And it's unfortunate because it looks like a timeline. That's what people think of time, and it's going to end, and something's coming out. And that's not the case. I've done that before. That, they're working on the X1. Should be coming out next month. You know, third came out 6 months later with no more lines after it. You know what I mean? So go figure. The one I'm going to pick. Sure, go ahead.
So real quick, what I would like to see though, when Richard Tyra showed us the whole skeletal flowchart thing with 1.0, it actually made my mind ticking, and with regards to the progress tracker, because one of the things I think persons eventually would like to see would be a breakdown of what it takes to complete a particular feature. So for example, the feature or the career of mining, what is needed? Do we need modules? Do we need ships? Or how many ships do you think CIG needs to complete this feature or this career? Do we need more FPS items? So I think ultimately persons just want to see overview as well as the expanded overview of what it takes or what certain main features are required. Prerequisites. The unfortunate thing is I don't think CIG yet knows. And that's what makes it frustrating for some. Because they were saying, okay, I have so much time, you know, why doesn't CIG know this? But at the same time, a large game is a complex dream, and they're realizing it as they go forward. It's good that they have this idea of 1.0 now, but at the same time, I think the progress tracker morphing into something that we saw at CitizenCon, but in terms of it being a game-oriented flowchart or breakdown, at least in my view, would be nice, because if we can see what is needed, it can just be bubble contribute to finishing off their idea of mercenary. Tools that contribute to finishing off the idea of bounty hunting. We can have an idea, okay, that's that. We may not have an idea of how long it'll take. We know what their idea is to finishing
what they're shooting for. I struggle with that. I agree with you, but I struggle because the community struggles. To use your point, what does it mean to be tier 0? What does it mean to be tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, right? So let's use the example of the inventory system, right? Because inventory is something that everybody's been wanting for the longest time. When we didn't have an inventory, now we've got inventory, right? And so we went from the kiosks, right, and our backpacks and all this other stuff. And so then all of a sudden, now we can't loot stuff off of bodies of people, right? But they said, but we're going to do some more stuff later. Well, what does that mean? I would love to have seen something that says, here's inventory. This is what we're looking for tier 1 of inventory to be. Tier 2. Now, mind you, the problem with doing this is the same problem we had with the roadmap, right? Because if we give the people, even in good faith, that this is what we're looking to do for inventory, tier 0 through 5, when we get to tier 3 and somebody pulls this off or says, no, we're not doing that, or we're changing it, then all the Bible thumpers come out and say, but you promised and you swore that this is what you were going to do, right? So there's that one group of people who are want to know more about where we're going and the vision and the possibilities. There's the other group of people who it's like, if you change anything, they're going to be ready to hold them to accountability that they changed their minds, or maybe I bought this ship based upon the fact that you said this is what's going to happen, right? And it doesn't happen right now. Not to be funny, y'all, but some stuff may not happen for another 5 years, 10 years. It just may not, maybe a part of the dream, but the full level of complexity that they want to do as this game evolves may not happen until later on. You may be able to do it, but that's like, what a good example of it is? Remember the Reclaimer issue with the claw? Oh, yeah. Right?
With the claw.
The claw was a big deal, right? Because people kept talking about the claw and I'm going to munch ships and swallow them up and chew on them. Like, no, you're not, because it's a claw. It's not a mouth, right? So it's a claw, not a jaw, right? All right. But CIG said we do want to go back to the claw. We want to even do it. Now, when is that? Is it next year? Is it 3 years from now? Is it after 1.0?
And technology and physics decide.
Yeah. And so that's the difficult part, right? Because you could say, here's our tier 1 through 5 for the Reclaimer, right? But when do those things happen? So I'm not sure if we give it. I understand the transparency and wanted to share and make us feel a part of the process, but at the same time, some of us gonna have to be on some serious high blood pressure medicine if they start putting that information out, right? I think it's a tough one. Let's take on one more here out of the subjects here, and I'm going to take on Spectrum. One of the things I would love to see CIG do, and I know this is on their plans, they've talked about this, and it's even come up most recently, that we will be able to have a mobile version outside that combines game communication and the Spectrum information. So I want to be able to take my mobile phone out. And remember we had an RSI app at one point. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay. And we only use it just for being able to verify our accounts. But I kept hoping that was going to blow up into something more. Now, eventually it went away and they went to Microsoft Authenticator, I think it is, a Google Authenticator.
Yeah.
But I was disappointed when that disappeared, because I thought that was kind of like tier 0 to us having that app that's an RSI app that we could tap into, so that when something's going on in your org, you could be reached, or you could find out the latest news from CIG. I really want to see that being built out, that mobile real world thing that ties us into the game. I know that's a lot to ask for, y'all, but I would love to see something like that happen in the game.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to them, having more Spectrum integration into the game as well.
Mm-hmm.
This is a crazy idea, I guess, but also to kind of possibly improve the issue council reporting. Let's say a particular issue happened in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine being able to not necessarily, you can just take a snapshot.
You want it real time?
Snapshot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not necessarily in real time even, but like, let's say a snapshot of the server activity, right? And when you're reporting, you can say, okay, this was a snapshot, and whatever snapshot existed at that point in time, you give CIG in their issue council a snapshot. It can be in the form of some kind of notepad that's exported after you clicked on a button or in the menu, after you experience that bug in the game. So if it's spirited or someone else on the server side, they can look back on the server activity and server and see where that snapshot occurred.
Yeah.
Whether or not that's going to help, kind of hone down on the bug.
Yeah.
Who knows? But it would be nice if this is something at least they thought of.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, the QR code is definitely there, so it's always nice to have your QR code up.
Right.
So this is just something else that I was thinking about in terms of.
I think it's great.
Reporting the issue.
I think it's great. Yeah, Prisoner, I know the app is a part of the stretch goals. I'm saying I wish they would get it going. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that the integration. This all is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is all coming out of the Montreal office, but I would love to see the integration of the website, the app, Spectrum, all start to come together. The org tools, all that stuff start to become, I want something else that connects me, in my hand, basically. Right now I've got to go to the website and I would love to have an app where the latest, when a patch comes out, there's a right Kalrati a patch thing comes up. Patch has been released. You know what I mean? Then you can break your neck, zoom in home, right? To see the patch came out. I want that to start moving forward is what I'm saying. But thank you. You're absolutely right. Okay. Okay. We're going to wrap it up. we've had a lot of conversation, a lot of talking tonight for us tonight. And I hope you guys have enjoyed a lot of this conversation as well that we've had. We've had a good time sharing with you about some of the things that the faux pas, the mistakes, the missteps that CIG has done. But I will say this, and I want to close the show off with this. It's very easy to find those negatives, right? Because those things are the things that impact us with gameplay. But I also want to celebrate what CIG does do well. And the work that they are doing amidst that. And I think that all of you are here because you support that, even though we can be very frustrated and we can definitely call out some stuff. And CIG, they're not perfect. No business is perfect. But I'm glad enough to know that when the community does come together and speak their voice and does say, hey, this is something that we think is an issue, that we at least do have a company that will kind of lend their ear to us and listen. Because I'll never forget one company in particular, when their people said, hey, we want to walk around on our ships and walk outside, and their community manager said, oh, you'll get tired of that after 5 or 6 times.
I remember that clip. I remember that video.
So I listen, it could be a lot worse. That's all I'm going to say, is that it could be a lot worse. As you guys know, as we're getting ready to wrap up, we're 40 days out. Today is the 40th day out from our event, Quantum Vegas, that's going to be taking place in Las Vegas, Nevada. And that's going to be on July the 12th. And we want to encourage you to consider coming out and joining us in Las Vegas. We've had a great response thus far. We've got some more tickets that are still on sale. We are extending our sale date. Today was supposed to be the last day for the early bird pricing, because they're going to go to full pricing after the 10th of June. So if you're thinking about it, you can get that ticket now, because of the 10th, the prices are definitely going to change. Also, if you cannot come to the event, you can also support us. We need the financial support. This is a major venture for us. First time doing something like this. We've partnered with several people from the community to make this event happen. Good night, Thracazogs. Thank you so much, as always, for being here with us. We really appreciate you. I'm going to show you the latest commercial here, and we've got a couple new faces that are joining us this week, and I'll talk about that when this gets done. I think. If I start it, did I start it?
Citizens of the Verse, get ready. The ultimate Star Citizen fan community event is happening in Las Vegas. That's right. Join me Saturday, July 12th at Area 15 in Las Vegas, Nevada for an awesome day celebrating Star Citizen and the community that makes it possible. Panels, special guests, giveaways, and more. There's even a Bar Citizen the night before. This is the Star Citizen event of the year that you don't want to miss. Seating is limited, but tickets are on sale right now, so grab them while they're hot. We'll see you at Quantum Vegas 2955. By the community, for the community.
For tickets and information, visit quantumvegas.space and follow our social media on X, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Quantum Vegas 2955. By the community, for the community.
All right. So we've got some new faces that are going to be attending the event. Sandy Roberts is going to be there. The wife of Chris Roberts, co-founder of Cloud Imperium Games, is going to be there. Also, Daniel Raymond, Ray's Guide, is going to be also one of our moderators that we're looking forward to being there as well. So this show is filling out more and more. It's going to be really, really a great time. If you're not going to CitizenCon, here's a great alternative for you to come to and hang out with a bunch of folks that are part of the Star Citizen community. Yeah, it's going to be really, really, really a good time. So we're excited about that. We just found out Thursday that Sandy's coming there. Maybe some more people coming. So this is your opportunity. Don't say later on, man, I wish I had gotten my ticket to go. You can get your ticket. You guys can come out there and join us. We will be really excited to have you all be there. And if you can't, we understand. It's a travel, it's a trip, but make a weekend in Vegas for it. There is a Bar Citizen the night before. Bar Citizen International is sponsoring it. It is going to be great. And that's going to be another fun night the night before. All of it's going to be at Area 15, which is an amazing facility. We're really hyped about doing this event. So yeah, hopefully you guys can join us there. Let's talk about what we got coming up next week. Next week, we are doing a show called The Real Deal. The Real Deal. One of the things, Kalrati, that people have said, maybe you've heard this before, CIG is changing the game and it's becoming more gamified, kind of arcadey. And so we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about what does it mean to have real physics in the game and stuff like that, right? All the things that we really, really want this game to be. And let's talk about how real do we really want Star Citizen to be? Let's see how real we really want it to be. So that's going to be next week. So hopefully you all will be able to join us for that. We'll have a really great conversation on that. I also want to tell you guys about our next show that we're going to be launching called Lore Lighthouse. This is going to be hosted by our very own Serious Fun, and he's going to be having some guests on. And man, yesterday, Kalrati, you haven't seen it yet. He's doing this. He's doing this first show on the Tavarin, and he's using AI, dude. When he sent me the stuff, exciting. I'm like, oh wow, this is going to be really cool. So I'm really excited. He's really into that, and he's going to bring. Let's just say he's going to bring some things to life for us, right? That's what I'm going to say about it. So I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, you guys, we're going to get more details. We're going to give you a date and a time pretty soon. So just letting you know, we're licking your chops for this. If you want to know about lore in a very different and exciting way, we are so looking forward to being able to have him bring this new show for the Star Citizen community. Let's see. One other thing that I'm going to announce, and we mentioned this on our anniversary show. I don't have an ad thing to pop up for it, but we also do have, as you guys know, Soul Citizens is a social. We're not an org. We're not an org. We are a social club. We are people who are in other orgs who like to come and hang out with us, right? And you're more than welcome to join our Discord and do that. Folks just come and hang out. Sometimes they're doing work. Sometimes they're watching TV. Sometimes they're with their kids. Sometimes they're playing the game. But you can come and hang out with us. But we do have a section now that we launched back in March called Soul Station. And Soul Station is like our group. It's our club. And if you want to be a part of Soul Station and hang out with us, maybe you're not with the group and you just want some folks that are very chill, you can join Soul Station. All you do is go to the RSI website, go to organizations, look up Soul Station. You'll find it, and you can sign up there. Captain Jones is overseeing that, and he'll be more than happy to get you in and get if you send a request to join. But we do get together and do things, not all the time. But we've been trying to build something every other week on Friday nights. So if you got Friday nights and you're free, but we do want you to be a part of Soul Station. You're more than welcome to join our Discord, but to be a part of Soul Station, if you want to join us and have some real casual, laid back stuff, you're more than welcome to join it. Other than that, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to say special thank you to my good friend Kalrati, who was more than helpful tonight with getting this conversation going. And once again, hope you guys had a great time during Invictus. Since all that's wrapped up now, we've got Alien Week coming up. And Kalrati, I can tell you, I feel it coming. I feel it. I feel it. I feel it. I don't want to say what it is, but there is a ship coming. You know me, Mr. Alien. So I'm looking forward to the ship that's going to be coming out. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Say
it's not the BMM. Sorry, FC.
Yeah, it's not the BMM. It's not the BMM, but there is something coming. You know what I neglected to do? I neglected to see who was on tonight. So did Fastcar put anything in the thing? No, he didn't put anything in there yet. So let me see who we got here. Who's on in the Star Citizen community tonight that we're going to send you guys over to? We've got that person. Let's send you guys over to... Hold on. We're going to send you guys over to... Let's send you guys over to Kimmy65. Kimmy is on right now. We're going to send you over. Who is that? Kai G? I don't know how to pronounce it correctly because there's so many consonants. But Kai, thank you so much for the follow. We truly appreciate that. Sorry that you just got here. Well, maybe you've been here for a while. You've probably been here for a while. The Chosen. I'm sorry. The Chosen One. I'm sorry. You're 25 bits earlier. How could I have missed that? Thank you. Don't want you to think that we missed that. Thank you so much for donating to us. We appreciate that tremendously. We are going to go ahead and set up our raid with Kimmy. When you guys get over with Kimmy65, let him know you came from the Soul Citizens. If you like what you see, follow him. He's a great guy. And until next week for the real deal, we'll see you. Kalrati, thank you again. And as always, peace, love, and soul. See you later. Ciao.